Good morning and welcome to the first episode of The Sweet Spot. And I am here today with my very good friend Rob Bousquet. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Good, thank you. And I would like to hear about what you started up in Vermont. Let's start off with, you moved up to Vermont. How long ago did you move up there with your family? Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's 2007 is when I moved there. I'd met my now wife about a couple of years prior to that. And yeah, been there ever since. And so, we have a nice spot out in the countryside.
So when you moved to Vermont, I remember thinking that was pretty bold. You and I went to college together back 20 years ago, it feels like now.
Yep.
And you weren't married, and you met your beautiful wife, Brooke, and you did some traveling, and you got into I love the fact that you guys are so into sports and outside activities. You guys live near a mountain up there. Do you have like a particular mountain that you ski at quite a bit?
Yeah, well, we live just outside of Burlington, so the closest ski area to us is Bolton. And it's a family mountain. Not a lot of people go there from out of state necessarily as a resort, like Stowe or Killington. But that's our family mountain. And yeah, we spend a lot of time there all year.
You know, I have kids too, and I'm always sharing with you how to keep them off their screens and into something that's really better for them. And I love how you guys do such great family activities and outside just to keep them away from their screens and keep them active as you share with them their growing process. You also got into mountain bike riding a long time ago. I have your old bike.
Yes.
And then I see you got into, what is it called, fat bike? Or?
Fat bike. Yeah, it's a bike designed for the winter or really soft kind of conditions, has really wide tires. It's a lot of fun. And that's kind of like my thing to just do to, have some me time. But it's also grown into so much more than that over the years.
Yeah, I see, you love to ride that thing everywhere. You're down visiting your mom right now in Connecticut, and I saw you were posting a couple of pictures of riding your bike at different parks, and I've got to try that fat bike. That thing looks amazing.
It's fun.
But so would you say, like, one of the things that I loved over the last few years since you've lived in Vermont is we do a trade for hemp. I grow hemp down here in Madison on the Blue Star farm, and you make maple syrup, right? So Can you tell us a little bit about that? And this is the point of our conversation today, the sweet spot. Tell me about
your
maple
I want to
syrup.
say, gosh, maybe 7 years ago, maybe even a little longer. I had a buddy that so let me back up a little bit. So we bought our property, and on our property we had some really nice maple trees, and I kind of had a passing interest in maple syrup as somebody who lives in Vermont and somebody who just enjoys maple syrup, like the pure stuff. Like, oh, this is great. But as far as like making your own, I'm like, wasn't really something that I was super interested in. But but like I said, there was a passing interest. So, like I said, about 7 or 8 years ago, a friend of mine who did sugaring for a long time on a much larger scale offered me some of the original. He had some of these galvanized buckets and taps, and he gave me about 10 of them. He says, take them. Why don't you just tap your trees and do it? I was like, all right, And, it was a very traditional setup. So, I learned about how to tap the trees. He showed me kind of what you need to do. And so I tapped the trees, and that first year, I really just started out with those buckets, and then I bought a turkey fryer with a big aluminum pot, holds about 5 gallons of liquid at a time, and started making syrup, started boiling it down. And the basic process of making maple syrup is very simple. It's boiling water for hours until you get to a point where it's just, it starts to really get way past the boiling point, by 219 degrees or so, and you're at syrup. But I kept doing it, and I was like, I kind of started to enjoy it. I was just doing it on my back porch. I didn't have a shed. I didn't have anything like that. But, it started to be one of these things where, like, my family was getting involved with it. The kids would help me collect sap. I'd sit there and let it boil all day long, and then I'd finish my process in our kitchen, and I'd make, maybe a gallon a year. And then, as I got into it each year, I started to expand my operation. So, I still went with... I went from 10 buckets. I get rid of the galvanized buckets. I went with very less sexy, but a better system, which is just using some food grade pails that I keep on the ground, and then I run the lines right into those pails, and then collect them into a big holding tank. So I've got a 55-gallon holding tank and a 35-gallon holding tank, And as those fill up, I'll start to boil it down because, when it comes to making maple syrup, depending on the sugar content of your trees, you could be anywhere from like 1.5% sugar content to 2.5. That's really kind of higher. And this with these like sugar maples, that's kind of what they're known for, is having a higher sugar content. But just about any maple tree will produce maple syrup for you. It's just the amount of sap you're gonna have to work with. So for me, I'm kind of lucky because I can use about 35 to 38 gallons to make a gallon of syrup. So my sugar content's pretty high in my
That's
trees.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
so much sap to create such a little awesome product.
It is, and it's really energy intensive too. So I mean, the way they used to do it, the way a lot of places do it, is you'll see the arch, and that's what they call the big pan where all the sap rolls in and it boils for hours and hours. A lot of those arches are heated with wood. I mean, that's how they used to do it, and still today, it's a glorified wood stove, and you could really boil syrup in anything, boil sap down in anything, as long as you have a heat source that's capable of boiling. It doesn't really matter whether you use wood, gas, whatnot. But those arches are they're the traditional way that a lot of people sugar today. I have an arch, but I went from wood. I used to have what they call a barrel stove, which is basically a 55-gallon drum that's been converted into a stove, and you get these kits for like $30. You put the feet on there, then you buy some fireproof bricks, and then you put some chafing pans in, and that's kind of how people start. It's like, okay, this kind of gets me going at the real hobbyist level, and then depending on how much you get into it, you can go from there. It's just like any other hobby. But for me, the wood became a real challenge because my kids are young. I can't spend all this time just feeding a fire, all hours of the day to keep this thing hot. And I think you even came to my house once when I had that wood boiler, and we were just like stuffing the crap out of it.
Yeah.
And it just took forever to get the heat, and it wasn't consistent heat. So I bought a propane burner, a big 3-burner contraption, and then I had a pan made to fit that thing, and that pan holds about 7 gallons of liquid of sap. And so I use the propane because it'll heat that thing really quickly. It'll boil, so it'll boil at a rate that I can manage. But then the nice thing is I just turn it off. Like wood, you just can't turn off. So if you're getting close to the end, you don't want to just let your fire go. I mean, if you have a really nice wood, arch, you could probably just let it go. But I don't have anything that fancy, so I can just turn it off, and then I can start it up the next day or whenever I have a moment. The nice thing when you're making syrup is you could, and different people have different methods of doing it, but you can just start it and stop it and start it and stop it as much as you'd like, and so you get down to the point where like, all right, I got to make this. But it's something that has. Over time, I've added onto the operation. So a buddy of mine had a garden shed, and he's like, "You want this garden shed?" I'm like, "Yes, I could use it as a sugar house," and it's probably a little smaller than this room, it's just I got a little stand in there for my jars, and I got the arch in the front. It's got a window on one side, it's got a window on the other side, and then I have kind of keep my maple equipment, buckets and stuff on the other, and then I've got one of these it's an old wooden chair that I got from my father-in-law a long time ago. I think it was like a hunting camp chair. And I'll sit in there and I'll just boil away. And, the interesting thing with making maple syrup is it's usually a really big social event, because, let's face it, you're boiling water, and people would have they would just have boils. They'd have a bunch of friends over while things are boiling. And mine's a little bit more solitary. But, I have people that come over. They'll hang out. Like kids come up, my wife comes up, and we'll just hang out. And sometimes all of us will sit in that little shed while this arch is going, and it's like 1,000 degrees in there. But you get that smell. The amazing thing is the smell.
Yeah.
The smell of the maple as it's coming, and the more sap is boiling down, it just gets stronger and stronger. And this, it's like a steam. It's like a steam cleanse in there because it is escaping, but it's just so much moisture. But it's amazing. And, there are moments that we have together in this little space producing, something from our land. And I think, as somebody who's been, working on your land, creating your hemp and, all of your gardens and all, there's something really
It's intimate.
There's just something really good. There's like a great feeling when you are working with what's on your land to produce something for you, for your friends. It's just like you can't quite describe what that feeling
It
is.
absolutely shows too, because every year you bring me down a couple times a year, at least once a year. You'll bring me down some of your Lost Nation,
yeah.
Lost Nation's maple syrup,
Yeah.
which is amazing, and you can tell what you're doing because the proof is in the pudding.
Nothing. I mean, it's also a process too. It's one where you learn, because every year I try to do a little bit better. So, one of my goals has always been to get better at filtering. Maple syrup, what happens if you don't have a really good filtering system, you get what they call this. You'll see a little cloud, or, if it's been sitting for a long time, you'll see this little bit of stuff on the bottom of a jar. And what that's called is called niter. And basically what happens is, because maple syrup has to boil at 219, so water boils at 212 degrees. And what happens once you get beyond that boiling point, you're actually boiling down to the sugars. And what the niter is really is, it's a combination of the mineral content of the water and the sugars that, they try to press that out. So when you go to the grocery store, you buy it from a big maple operation, they've got it all filtered out. What I do is I try and filter it out. I have multiple filters that I use. And I kind of let it cool down a little bit, and then seal it up. And still, I get that in there. It's just inevitable. It doesn't affect anything. It's just kind of, some people just don't like to see the cloud. So when I give you like a jar of syrup and stuff, usually it doesn't have that. It has settled down pretty much, because I usually make enough where it's like I'm always using the previous year's stuff, not giving away the current year's, not unless they feel like it's really like good. So that's one thing I'm trying to do is get better at filtering it without having to spend $1 bazillion. There's other ways you can like get rid of that, but it becomes kind of wasteful, because a lot of people will say, well, just let it cool all the way down and then just keep pouring it off, and then you take the waste and you can bake with it or whatever. I just haven't done that.
What you love most about maple syruping, what do you think from your words?
I think it's just, I think what I enjoy the most is really the whole process. From the moment you tap the tree, because you have to have a lot of respect for the tree. This is a living thing that you are actually wounding to, take some of its life force. That sap is how it lives. It's just running water up and down all to the branches, the tree. That's its life source. And you're taking a little bit of that off, and you have to put a little hole in that tree. So you kind of wound that tree, and you have to have a lot of respect for the tree. And then once you hit that sap, you then need to have respect for that sap. You have, you've now got to take it and, boil it down, and, that whole process, of, from the tree to the container, that journey is like, that's what I find I really like about it. It's not any one thing in particular. Of course, the finishing off the final product, that's all great. But it's all the little things you do in between, because you have to wait, and then you have to collect, and then you have to fire it down. And in all of those, there's different things that happen. So like when I'm boiling, the family or sometimes friends will stop over, and, it'll be a social moment. And then it's kind of like everybody goes away, and you're just kind of left there to kind of finish it off yourself. And you got a lot of time to think, but at the end you get this really you get this great product that you're able to share with people. Yeah, you're able to share with people. And I think that's the part I like. I like the whole thing, but it's just like, oh, you made this and now you can give this to people. So it's like, I don't think of it as much as a business as much as like, no, I just want to share these efforts.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes me think of the word reciprocity. It comes up a lot in the indigenous conversations. One of the things that I'm learning, and I have been learning over the years, is about that reciprocity between us and our environment. So with you, it would be with the tree. So just the fact that you're acknowledging that you're wounding the tree and you're extracting something from it, and in return, you're giving that present, your presence and that gratitude for that tree, that would be an energetic exchange. And that's I think why partly, people who are microbrewers or craft farmers, or if it's a beer maker or CBD producer or maple syrup, when the thing that is different from the industrial acquisition of these products on a mass scale and a small operation where you have the farmer or the harvester like yourself, removing what they need from this tree and in exchange giving back that awareness to the tree, really amplifies everything that is coming in the final product. Makes it sweeter, makes it you just feel better when you're using your products. And I think that's why I love your syrup at the end of the year. So I just want to thank you for coming and sharing our first episode in the Sweet Spot with
I like it.
Rob Bousquet. All right, well, thank you, Rob, for coming in today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe. And if you'd like to be a guest on our show with something that you're absolutely impassioned about, we would love to feature you here on the Big Talk from the Little House on the Sweet Spot. Okay, well, thank you, Rob. Good to see you today, buddy.
All right, good to see you as well.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Thank you.